Please follow us on Facebook and on YouTube at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live, like our pages or on-air phone numbers around the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95 because you know it's true if you hear it on Q. We continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, love, peace, prosperity, and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. This is, in fact, our 24th Global View on Q show for 2026, and we continue to engage with our local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. With me tonight is my co-host, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, prominent agronomist and environmental advocate, Atherton Arthi Martin, Tony Edwards, you hear a lot from him tonight, and prolific Dominican businessman, and my schoolmate, Herbert Suki Winston. Good evening to all of you gentle people. Tonight, we continue to discuss the essential ingredients for local business success in Dominica towards building a prosperous nation. I think every Dominican would like Dominica to be, in fact, a prosperous nation. So here are some talking points or questions that I will put to my guests, my panelists tonight. How important is the example of our leaders in the lives of our young people? What satisfaction do youth derive from working hard and smart to achieve their goals? Is there anyone inspiring them to achieve their goals? Should the government assist local businesses to become successful? What policies should be put in place to assist? Are our schools doing enough to nurture students for the future to help ensure Dominica's prospects for the future? What are the essential ingredients for business success? Have these ingredients been eroded? Do our local entrepreneurs receive sufficient support from the government of Dominica? Is government policy the greatest obstacle to stimulating the productive sector? By investing some 80% or so of public resources in social programs, as allegedly may have been done by Venezuela to the detriment of its people? Is our education system doing enough to nurture productive, hardworking citizens? Have Dominicans lost the urge to earn for themselves and for their families? Is the government playing its part in teaching young people to become productive men and women in Dominica? And what role must parents play to ensure that their children depend on the sweat of their brow to be successful? And what lessons can be taught to the young men and women of today and tomorrow? So tonight we look forward to the contributions of Justice Dr. Irving Andre, prominent agronomist and environmentalist Arthi Martin, Tony Edwards, and prolific Dominican businessman Herbert Suki Winston to this topic, the essential ingredients for local business success in Dominica towards building a prosperous nation. So as usual, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to help us give our usual huge shout out and a big thank you to our farmers, our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, the police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, public and private sector patriots, and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. We welcome each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community at home in Dominica, in the region and globally. So thank you tonight, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on the Global View on Q. So I go now to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for his first comments on the topic, the essential ingredients for local business success in Dominica towards building a prosperous nation. Over to you, Dr. Andre. You need to unmute your mic. Your mic is muted.
Yes. Once again, good evening to the esteemed guests and your listeners. I should indicate to you that I'm getting a little feedback. So I don't know if that is on my end or on your end, but hopefully it will dissipate as we go around. Obviously, this is a very important topic from many different perspectives. The ingredients of success. What are the ingredients of success? Very few topics can be more relevant and pertinent today than to meditate or to talk about those ingredients. Why? Because to a significant degree, although we have young folks and elderly folks like Mr. Whitnell Louis and obviously Mr. Suki and others who are still engaged and who still manifest those wonderful components of success, which certainly would indicate perseverance, hard work, dedication, or humility. I can indicate to you that a few weeks ago I was traveling to Newtown, minding my business in the proverbial way.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's put it nicely. He is not looking at fourscore, the age of fourscore. He is not looking at that age with a pair of binoculars. Neither is Mr. Martin looking at that age, that milestone, with a pair of binoculars. They have seen it very close up, and I believe I would.
your internet keeps going in and out, Irving.
Yes, yes, you couldn't get it. So, tell you what, I don't know if you want to move on to another speaker, and let me see if I can work out the bugs from my computer, and you.
Okay, well, let's do that then. Okay, if you're hearing me, we will do just that. Let me then go over to Arthie Martin, because Arthie has been around for a long time, just like I have been, and Suki has been, and has been observing what is going on in this economy, in this space. Arthie, your thoughts on the topic here tonight?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm particularly pleased to share the panel with a, another near octogenarian. I am already an octogenarian and a young man, youth, and yourself, Sheridan. I'm not going to dabble in the numbers when it comes to you. You look like you're 42.
Oh, don't
Um,
don't don't tell them my age at all.
I will not. I promise
Thank
not
you.
to.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Irvin Andre, who's an inimitable, and it seems to me that he's found, that proverbial fountain of youth as well.
Oh
Maybe he's
yes.
found it and keeps it for himself. That's another matter we need to talk about another time. But
Yes.
the truth is, um, you know, what makes a country tick, hum? What makes a society go and grow? Evidently, it's the people of the society. So you can have a society filled with all sorts of materials and minerals underneath or above the ground. But if the people of that society haven't come to terms with, well, why are we here? What can we do while we're here that makes a difference, that is a plus? And how can we be sure that we go forward as much as possible without leaving any significant segment of the population behind? And for me, very important, how can we go forward without destroying and hence denying future generations access to the same wonderful resources that we would end up using to make our progress forward? So these to me are the pillars that set the fencing around why the people of a society have to come to grips with what are we doing here, how are we going to manage our lives here, and how are we going to do it in a way that makes sense for us, for our children, and our grandchildren. Um, and I think there's something you said in your introduction that I would like to flag as the first and probably single most important ingredient that results in the stimulation of a thought process like what I'm articulating, where people think, figure things out, and decide on action. And that single item is your home, your neighborhood. Somebody came up with this phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. But who raises the people who raise the child in the village? Who, if it's a village to raise a child, what does it take to raise a business? What does it take to raise a sector? And I think if we ask those kind of deeper questions, it will come to us that, where did I get my first idea that I could take that little toy truck that somebody gave me for Christmas and I could dismantle it, figure out how it works, improve upon it, and put it back together, or dismantle it and not be able to put it back together, but have a lot of spare parts that we will now figure out what else can we do with these things. So, I mean, that's probably one of the earliest indicators that somebody has allowed that kind of thought process. Because your parents could have said, leave the truck alone, somebody gave it to you as a gift, don't destroy it. Or somebody else could have said, hey, Sheridan is a little boy and he seems to be displaying interest in how things work. So let's encourage him, etc. So it starts as far back as that. Even when we as children subconsciously observe how our parents take care of us, how our mother holds us, how our father walks with us, how the chores in the house get divided so that everybody has something to do, and at the end of the day, everything gets done, which is basically what the organization of a business is driven by. So I'm suggesting if we want to create, to inspire, to launch the next two generations of persons who will be social entrepreneurs, commercial entrepreneurs, political entrepreneurs, and other kinds of entrepreneurs. We better start now. We better make sure that some sense of a private space for that child is preserved in the place where they are being raised. That's not very easy nowadays because many of the households don't have the space, the income, or the parental time or talent to guide the children. So it would seem to me, although it may seem a long hop away from creating jobs, generating revenue, etc., etc., that's where it begins. And I end my first input by saying it wasn't too long ago, that Dominica had over 10,000 businesses, registered small businesses. You know where they were? In agriculture. We had over 10,000 farmers registered, borrowing money, investing money, employing workers, harvesting crops, selling crops, generating revenue, creating funding for the public sector, and so on. 10,000. Less than 2.5 decades ago. Tony maybe was not even born yet. Where did these folks come from? And how did they, many of whom did not have much of a formal education, how did they convert their villages from little wattle and daub houses, little shingle-based houses, to beautiful villages like Maripot, Wesley, Ansdime, Calibishi, Wood, and so on and so on? How did that happen? These were entrepreneurs. And how did they instigate and inspire in their children, even while they were working and helping on the farm business, a love of education, a love of spirituality, a love of community involvement? Too often we leapfrog over the locations of the answers to our present problems, trying to find them somewhere else, when in fact, the answers, the systems, the personnel They're right here. How do we release that energy again? Because it was released once before. And releasing it so that younger ones like Tony and others have a much better chance of converting their dreams into the future businesses of Dominica. That's what I'd like to say at the outset, Sheridan. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Artie. Dr. Andre is still, making arranging to log in, so he should be with us in a moment. But I mean, thank you. I appreciate your opening comments there, Artie. Looks like Dr. Andre is coming back on now, so I'll just give him a minute to see if he can set himself up so that he can begin talking to us. But maybe I might take a moment and go over to the mighty Herbert Suki Winston, who's in studio with us tonight. Suki, what about your opening remarks on the topic here tonight?
Good evening to the masses. Good evening to listeners home and abroad. And as far as I would say, specifically, a wide listening audience in the state of Iran for the comments that I have received of taking contact with my country, my people, and wishing my people the best in their line of endeavors. Please, O Lord, intervene in the process of enlightening your children to do the right thing. To the wishes of the masses will be respected as to when the time comes that my people will get to the polls and do the right thing. Oh, my dear Lord, how much it actually takes in the engagement of the mind to do and to help the voiceless in doing what is expected in the scientific approach of the election when it does come around. There are some major factors that have to be studied and understood and should be taken not for granted, but pay particular attention, because what we have in front of us in this process of this election may, I would say may, be one of the last of the chances to engage in the democratic principles. I am not too sure that things will go well if the wishes of the people are not engaged in doing the right thing. For so doing, this is the reason why, as early as I start on this program, my whole wish would be to see the reality of an education revolution. This factor here would permit and allow a greater state of political maturity. My people need to be enlightened, not by the gimmicks, not by the handouts, because whatever is engaging will experience a very short existence. May the Lord permit us to carry on our work, to engage ourselves in trying to make a contribution of, as I said, this form of education revolution in this country. If this, and if at all, the permission is not being granted, woe beyond that this may, as the sign sometimes show, that under the principles of a dictatorial system, the voice of the voiceless will increase so significantly that it will be a time that our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, if at all the Lord permits the hours for us to be around, will also engage themselves by saying, Grandpa, what we're experiencing today, we were told that it happened in your time. What did you do to alter it? So this is the reason why I'm here this evening, to engage myself in the struggles of enlightenment of my people, the struggles of the implementation of an educational revolution. It needs to be broadened. The period needs to move in the four corners of the country for my people to have a better understanding as to when an opportunity prevails, and for us to be able to get to the ballot under the existing circumstances, which is very frustrating, to say the least. But we, as the people who reap the fruits of our parents, where life had a value and the definition of life was one that we cherish and we were able to make use of it, that we would be able to get something out of it, that we would be preparing for the lives ahead of our children and grandchildren. My people, there are certain phrases which my parents got me acquainted to and permit me the opportunity to bring some of them forward. As my old parents said, on no uncertain terms, they never referred to themselves as intellectuals. This is their vision that I and my very close friend, Mr. Macmillan John Baptist, deceased, were under the shelter of the very same parents who nurtured us, who taught us the greater value of life. Let me just say, for the opportunity, as my old parents said to both of us, do not expect more from the world than what you contribute to make it a place of equal opportunities. This could not come from a non-intellectual. Those words could not come from one who couldn't read and write. What we saw and what we valued is the great wisdom that was expressed to us by words. Today, there are many factors that confronts us. And I am proud to be the recipient of a vision that my parents said to me and also said to themselves, take it not as you want it, but as it is prepared for you. It was a life that choices, even in the home circles, was not determined by us. We were prepared to accept, even in the diet, that we would not given the opportunity to decide what we would like for lunch or what we would like for dinner. That opportunity never was available. We were trained to accept what was prepared and showed no ill face that it is not something that we like. They were disciplinarians, they love us, they did the best that we can, that they could, and here it is at this particular moment. We too stayed back in the country and make a contribution of by way of our talent. And I pray to the Most High that my other co-partner will enjoy the dedicated service that he gave to his family, to himself, and to the country on a whole. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those opening remarks here, Suki. Uh, when you come back around for the second time, I'm hoping that you will share with us your journey from where you just started off at the home to where you are today, a prominent businessman in Dominica. I mean, came from very humble beginnings, as you just described. And it would be really a good lesson for all of these young folks, the young entrepreneurs, the young people who are looking to be budding business people to become successful. You might need to share with them that journey so they will understand that the going is not always easy. But I mean, if dedication and commitment and perseverance and discipline and ambition, you know, they get somewhere. So when you come back, you'll probably share that with us. Dr. Andre is having some technical difficulties. He's probably trying to log back in now, and I'm hoping that Sherwin will admit him as soon as he's available. But let me just go over to Tony. Tony is the new kid on the beach. You know, he is the younger generation that is now looking for opportunities. And I think Tony, in his business, is a kind of business that is looking to assist other young businesses in seeking opportunities and finding markets and creating their profiles. But I mean, Tony, but maybe I might say age before beauty. And I might say, let me just go back to Dr. Andre because he's with us now. And I'll come back to you in a minute, Tony. So, Dr. Andre, your opening remarks.
Well, let me say good evening to each and every one of you, certainly our esteemed panelists, your listeners, the bosses behind the scene, and everyone who's given us or contributed to where we are today. I mean, look at your panels, your panelists, Mr. G. You have Mr. Suki, you have Athi Mata, both very well known gentlemen, both very highly admired for their dignity, for their hard work, for their dedication to the cause of an honest, productive, prosperous Dominica. And that is what we want. And is it not somewhat anomalous that here you have two elderly gentlemen, although they are full of life, but who have crossed the Rubicon, so to speak, who perhaps could well be relaxing in their homes, enjoying themselves, their family, probably thinking about their passage through life. But here they are on a radio program sharing their wisdom, which could benefit all of us. Now, let me say this. If you look through our history, our education as a nation, we can think of certain sayings, certain truths which were passed down from generation to generation, like something you inherit. In an older generation, for example, many of the young students at Rosa Boys School or the grammar school or whoever, they were taught one simple truth. You are the artificers of your own future. In other words, you will determine to a significant degree what you make of yourself. Others will remember that saying, as you make your bed, so shall you lie on it. Not as your government or not as your mother make your bed, so shall you lie on it, but as you make your bed, so shall you lie on it. Others may remember, for example, that you make hay while the sun shines. In other words, you make the best of whatever opportunities come your way, irrespective of the hardships. And some of your listeners, Mr. G, may recall that Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't get rich overnight. You don't get rich by milking a cow you do not own. You don't get rich by using taxpayers' money and putting it to your own personal use. You don't get rich by filtering or pilfering from the state coffers to enrich your own self. These are the foundational pillars on which an independent Dominica was built. And to the extent that we do not continue to pass on these belief systems, to the extent that we do not continue to pass on this philosophy of life, this philosophy of success, then we are doomed indeed. I was listening to one of your radio programs, Mr. G, and there was a discussion about the recent budget enactments. And that there was a discussion about the tax reforms, so-called reforms. And one of those reforms involved the imposition of a flat tax. Now, any economist worth his salt or any person who have any history of economics or accounting will tell you that a flat tax is perhaps the type of tax which will most fully benefit the rich. I think that has been well known to persons in the field. It has also been well known to persons where such a tax has been instituted. That is to say, if everyone across the board pays a certain tax percentage, it is simply a matter of common sense who will benefit the most. But if you have an economy, if you have a leadership that gives the maximum benefits to the richest of us, then clearly you see a significant problem right there. If you have an economy or a leadership which cherry picks or hand picks those who will get business concessions, then you are dooming a significant portion of the business community to a life of perennial servitude. If you have a philosophy where foreigners are given benefits which local citizens do not have, then you are suffocating the business community, although a few may, quite frankly, enjoy some modified success. If you are closing markets to indigenous business and activity and giving them to other persons who may or may not be giving you kickbacks, then in fact you are choking enterprise to death. And the question is, are we at that stage of a life as a nation where we are doing the most harm to our own people and to our own economy? The evidence suggests that is exactly what we're doing. You have people like Suki, you have people like Afi, you have other business persons who've toiled in the wilderness, who've succeeded, but who could have succeeded even more spectacularly had there been an environment, had there been an environment conducive to growth. Now, there are some persons who may say, well, you're talking doom and gloom. But you know that his old saying, Mr. G, those who do not know their history, quite frankly, will be buried in the future. So it's very important that we know what has happened in the past. It is very important we understand the ingredients of success. It is very important to know the reality that we face on the ground today as we speak, because without that knowledge, we will not make any attempts to break through that stranglehold which has relegated Dominica to the bottom of the heap. This is not doom and gloom. These are facts. These are inconvenient truths that we cannot avoid, because if we avoid them, then we will remain in this perpetual state of dependency where he was significantly green, rather than put value to those mangoes that lay rotten along, rather to add value to these grapefruits and oranges, rather than, for example, not using our bananas in creative ways, just like one individual here and there, but as a mission, as part of a strategy to push ahead our not agriculture as the hazard industry, but
Um,
as their life.
Irvin, can I suggest that you turn off your video and just use your audio? Yeah, maybe it
All
might
right. I hope that
just turn
I
off your
said
video. Turn off
some
your video.
kerosene on your cell phone so that you
No,
can hear me.
no.
But
What I'm
I will
saying,
end on that note. We need
you can you can just try turning off your video. Yeah, and then go ahead and speak.
oh, it's off.
Okay, very
The
good.
video is off.
Okay, I'm hearing you
You
better
can't
now.
see me.
No,
So
so I'm hearing you. Yeah.
probably in summary, we need a bold, clear vision, a vision motivated by the successes of the past, a vision motivated by the future as exemplified by the youngest panelists this evening, and a vision which embraces the intricate or the intrinsic value of every Dominican as opposed to relegating huge sectors of it to the sidelines at the time that others seem to have an affinity or an ability to dominate. Broke, get rich overnight, and disappear into the wilderness. Thank you.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, Dr. Andrew. Now, your because where you are, probably your internet may not be very strong. It is probably better to leave the video off and just use the audio because we were hearing you very, very well once you turned off your video. So, thanks a lot for your opening remarks. Tony, well, you've heard some of the remarks made by Arthi, by Dr. Andre, by Suki so far. You're in the business now. You're up and coming. Your thoughts on the enabling environment, I mean, and what it is that you really need to be successful in this environment.
Okay, thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm Davidson Tony Edwards, and I run a business called Shop DM, where we work with several businesses in the across the economy. We are an enabler. We offer e-commerce and payment tools. Yeah, so I'll happily share part of I'll share whatever I can share to contribute to the leaders tonight, to the listeners tonight. Yeah, my contributions will be exclusively from the perspective of the business environment. I mean, I have my political views, but I'm here to talk about the business element. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you all have said, which is that uh, in a place like Dominica, for you to first of all take up the mantle of doing business here, and then to exhibit the perseverance necessary, like Suki, to actually be successful in business here, you have to be very driven, and I would say driven beyond simple financial returns. I'd say driven with a strong sense of patriotic duty and wanting to see the country develop. And I can see how that ties across all of the statements from the amazing speakers you brought together tonight. And that's definitely been my story. So I don't want to talk for, I like to be very precise in my statements. But you've given me like a general, opening remarks thing. So I'd say, yeah, like, actually, probably should clarify. Should I talk about my opinion on what would best set up someone starting in the local business environment for success?
You can speak. You can speak about anything you feel like.
Okay, I just want to be on topic. Yeah, I mean, okay, so at the highest level, I fully agree that we need to think of things holistically. We need to think about education. We need to think about the environment provided by the government. We need to think about the motivation of people and the family environments that they're brought up in. Absolutely, and that applies across the board. The listeners that are here tonight, well, they are in the environment. If they are considering starting businesses, it's not about how they're being brought up right now. So what I can say is I've learned, like, we've been running a business here for 6 years, and I've learned that in choosing to do business in Dominica, you have to be clear about the context. And then your strategies for success kind of reflect off of that. So one of the main things about the context is that the domestic market is very small, right? We're talking about 70, 80,000 people, 60,000 people. And for every one of those constraints, like the market being small, you need a strategy like the balancing strategy for that is try to access an export market. So for example, our company has gotten into selling tickets for events as well as the other e-commerce activities that we do, and that helps us. That ties us to diasporan spend, because a lot of diasporans are the ones who purchase tickets. So again, be realistic about the environment, in that the market is small, and I would say plan to export in some sense as quickly as possible. Then another part of the environment that has been really relevant is the infrastructure available. Like, in the time I've been here, I've come to realize that it's really one of the defining parts of it being a country being a quote unquote developing country, that there isn't across the board high quality infrastructure available. So Dominica has pretty good infrastructure in some senses. The roads, I know the government has done a pretty good job on the roads. The telecoms are really good. But for instance, with our particular business, there just wasn't payment processing available in a way that was like we run an e-commerce business, and we took about 3 years to just get proper payment processing, right? So that's like an infrastructural issue if you think of doing any form of online business, e-commerce, right? Similarly, if you're a local manufacturer or a farmer, you're going to run up against the lack of exporting infrastructure. So we work with a lot of small businesses, and a consistent issue among the small businesses was just being able to ship their goods to people in the regional market that were interested, that were part of the market, but they couldn't get their goods to them. So I would say be aware of the fact that you're not going to have access to the type of infrastructure that there is in the US or the UK, and plan for that. In our case, we kind of stumbled into the issue, but what we ended up doing is, once we solved the infrastructure problem for ourselves, the payment problem, we turned it into another product, and we are solving it for people across the economy now. So one of the things that we offer is Shop DMP, which basically allows, whether you are an apartment owner, we have people who offer exercise services, they're small manufacturers, and they use our payment tools to do invoicing, to do set up basic e-commerce shops, etc. So what took us 3 years to do, we enable them to do in 3 days now. Another element that's kind of unique about here is and I think that ties more into, let's say what Afi was saying. It's the human resources you may struggle to, for instance, form an effective team here. And in my mind, that's mainly because of colonial legacy. Like we still carry a lot of just ineffective ways of working. Once people have power over each other, they act in an authoritarian way. People generally are not bought into the businesses that they're part of, so they're not putting their all into the work. And when I look at businesses around me, because again, we work for lots of businesses, I see either that they are often one-person businesses because they feel like they can't get anyone to work with, or they don't appear to have super effective teams. In our case, we have a very effective team. Even though it's a small team, it's only 3 of us. But I would say probably 80-90% of our success is attributable to the effectiveness of our team. And I would boil that. I would say a big part of it is luck. The fact that myself and my business partner, we knew each other at school and we met up shortly after I returned here. But also the way that we consciously run the business, which is in a respectful, collaborative nature that purposefully pushes against the kind of toxic business culture that is very common here. I would say, yeah, like one bit of advice I constantly give people is team up as much as you can. And if you team up, actively try to work in an effective way with people. And yeah, just maybe the fourth point I will just put in there as a wrap up for my introduction is financing. So regardless of what business you start, you're going to need to access financing to establish the business. There's this concept, no need to go into that. The point is you need financing to start the business because you're going to start on day one spending money, and on day one, you're not going to be making money. And it's going to continue like that for a while. Potentially, it will potentially be several years until you make as much as you are spending, and the gap that is caused by that will be filled with financing. In Dominica, the main form of financing that you can access is debt, and that's not appropriate for a lot of the businesses that are here. Debt is mostly appropriate for businesses that are operating in established markets with established business models, but more specifically, they have predictable revenue streams, so they know they can pay back the debt. That doesn't apply to, pretty much everyone you really want me to speak to tonight, right? Like they're starting something and they're not. It's not necessarily established. They're doing something innovative, so the market even isn't proven. And that's why there are other financial instruments, for example, equity investments or grants. Interwoven in what the other speakers have spoken tonight, and also in the questions you sent me, there is a clear question of, what can the government do better? The government can definitely provide financing in a more effective way. It doesn't actually take much financing for you to transform the chances of businesses. For example, if you have before I returned, I encountered some officials from Botswana, and they told me about the Botswana Innovation Fund, and that was a government established fund in Botswana, which was capitalized with something like maybe about $1 million US a year. And then there was an independent team that would essentially select maybe 10 businesses every year and then allocate 100,000 US to them, right? Like a program like that dramatically changes the chances of success for business. In our case, the financing for my business came primarily from my savings in the UK, and then moving back here and basically depleting my savings. So self-financing, and secondarily, we managed to raise financing from a core of diasporans and local people who bought into the business. So in lieu of government programs, that is what I'm most bullish on. Actually, aside from government programs, I'm most optimistic about that, which is the diasporans, like the diasporans who are listening to this radio show right now, can organize themselves themselves into effective financing instruments and create financing options for persons locally. So yeah, I would say basically tapping into an export market, building effective teams, being aware of the infrastructure traps, and strategizing about how you're going to access financing other than debt would be, 4 of the tips I would give to local entrepreneurs.
Well, thanks a lot, Tony, for your opening remarks. Very, very deep, very fundamental. But let me just go to Arthi. Arthi, Tony did mention about the environment, the enabling environment that he found when he returned. He did also mention the question of support and the ingredients. In fact, he dealt with the ingredients for success. But Arthi, do you believe that the ingredients for successful business in Namdek have been eroded over the last certain number of years? And do you believe that our local entrepreneurs receive sufficient support from the government of Dominica, as Tony was just describing?
Well, we often forget a very important historical point in that regard, and Tony is absolutely on point. How was the banana industry financed? After the kickoff from the British Development Division and so forth, that was a self-financing industry. Farmers allowed a deduction from their income to be taken every paycheck, which went to the funds at the Bananas Association and other associations to purchase the inputs, etc. They provided the financing for their growth at the farm level. They had the land, they provided the labor, and the peculiar arrangements of deductions from their revenue to meet their more capital needs allowed the capital issue to be addressed painlessly. It got to the stage where if you were a farmer performing well, you had access to increased lines of credit, zero interest, because it was drawn down against your sales. So the incentive to produce more was built into the arrangement for financing. That is why it was a relatively painless thing. In fact, the Division of Agriculture and Extension Department had great difficulty dissuading farmers from going into bananas, which everybody wanted to do, when their lands were not suited to bananas at all. And the reason that they were so excited by the banana process, it was self-financing. Once they got registered as a grower. So that's really important. How do we build on that kind of self-financing model, which is not a model we hear reference to at all in budget speeches, in agricultural policy speeches, or in financing speeches at the various financial institutions. So I really feel sometimes this thing is staring us in the face, and we need to find a way to do that. Tony also mentioned the question of infrastructure and the challenge of infrastructure. There was a tropical storm in 2015, followed by a hurricane in 2017. Up until today, in some of the most highly productive areas of Dominica for yams, tanias, dasheen, plantain, bananas, etc. Those roads were never cleared. And I'm not talking rebuilt, They were never cleared. So the little shoots of grass and saplings that grew up from 2017 are today big trees growing in the middle of what was a feeder road. Mont Jean, Rivière in the areas of Brantford, in the east, etc. Farmers were not able to get to their places of work. And why is that so? It is so because, frankly, the persons managing and running the national policy architecture, guiding the investment in infrastructure, responding to the national imaging of the country as a producer of things that other people would want, and hence helping spur marketing transactions. These things are in the hands of people who haven't got a clue and frankly have very little interest in doing it. And I can see you, especially over the last 12 to 15 years. So after you lose and you break those bridges over a 12 to 15-year period, how do you restore enthusiasm in people who are now 60, 70, 80 plus years old in your agricultural sector, and hence was also the suppliers of products to our local manufacturers like Bello, DCP Colgate. Before it was Colgate, it was DCP, and required coconuts and copra. Where do you think that came from? It also came from those people who had to get to their farm. So in other words, over the last 12 to 15 years, we have most effectively dismantled the infrastructure of our economy. Instead of setting out methodically to rebuild that, which is not a very glamorous thing, I mean, roads and bridges and so on, we have chosen instead to focus billions of dollars into building some sort of symbol of progress and international effort. And I really believe this misdirection, misallocation of funds represents a misallocation of brains in the leadership of our country, and not just the political leadership, let me hasten to add. Because while there are great and wonderful young professionals speckled throughout the public sector, there are a lot of awful senior managers located at critical decision-making and resource allocating points in the system, who are interfering with the efforts of younger, more enterprising public servants. That is an issue. So when Suki talks about, and when he prays to his God for a shift that would allow for a new mindset that allows people with competence and capacity the space and the room and the resources to do their work, that's the significance of it. But even that we have lost. Even that we have lost. So I'd like to suggest a couple of things. The resource problem in our society, let me put it this way, can be solved, because I'm going to assume, act on an assumption which may be flawed, that there are still billions of dollars from the sale of Dominica passports sitting somewhere. That is the assumption, that there are still a lot of dollars sitting somewhere from the sale of passports, because we did sell over 50,000, close to 80,000 passports in the last 15 years. I'm saying small businesses like Tony's and the many others, medium-sized businesses like ours and many others, could have benefited and have made this proposition to a few of the policymakers in the country today and several of the senior managers of institutions. Put a chunk of that money into a sovereign investment fund. To go, Tony, they've got people in Botswana call it something else. But that sovereign investment fund has one major purpose, which is to trigger, stimulate activity that is economic, that is sensible and sustainable, and that creates new opportunity for younger entrepreneurs over the next 2 to 3 generations. Those funds could go not into the hands of an individual farmer here and another one day, as we like to distribute fertilizer and houses even nowadays. They go into the institutions, the credit unions, for example, the various banks, for example. And they do two things with that. Number one, They do a rigorous auditing of their accounts to the productive sectors of the society and offer a significant writing down of the debt associated with all these investments, using as the guarantor of that write down the investment funds. That would do two things. Immediately, the monthly mortgages against all those debts, I'm talking about debts for education, debts for health, debts for business, debts for travel, vacation, all of these things. So you suddenly have a surplus of disposable income available in society. But it's not just free. If you benefited from a sovereign investment fund, there are certain obligations that you now must commit to, a certain portion of the money must be reinvested in the business. Certain portion must be reinvested in training new persons, developing new talent and skill pools to go into your and other businesses and so forth. In other words, if there is a sense of purpose and vision in the leadership of a country, a tiny one like ours, these are things that can happen instantly. We just had a budget. Our budget speech is all that would be required to trigger and enable such a massive reallocation and assignment of wealth in the society. And you could do the same thing with education. You already have a campus sitting down there which used to house 1,200 full-time students. You mean by now, after how many years of giving it away, we cannot have a school of forestry in which we are a leading Caribbean nation, a school of local government and cooperatives of which we are a leading nation, a school of music, art, and entertainment of which we are also a lead. In other words, we could have used the same facilities, changed the purpose, and restored such enormous economic and other activity in that part of the island. It would have, like Ross, quickly achieved 30% of the GDP of Dominica. So we're not talking magic. We're not talking airy-fairy. We're talking things that can be done today. And the only reason, I would say, the big reason why it's not being done, because those with the power to decide don't want to do it because they want their wealth issues to be continued to be looked after, while the wealth issues of young entrepreneurs and not so young entrepreneurs become discarded, dispensable. That is what change and new government and democracy is about. Because that is about spreading the wealth. Democracy is not about gift giving, not about handing out envelopes with money. It's about enabling. We have the money. Let's just do it.
Thank you, Arthi. I want to go to Dr. Andre briefly before we take a break. Dr. Andre, if you're hearing me, you can unmute your mic, because I wanted to get your comments based on the comments you've heard from Suki, from Tony, and from Arthi. The further comments on the enabling environment, and then what it is that could be done to help business. You made a comment, for example, on the one provision in that budget. I mean, do you see anything else in that budget to help to stimulate the growth of the mainstays of our economy?
Personally, and I'm probably myopic, but I'm not too sure that I see anything foundational or transformational, to be quite honest with you. One of the things that there's been passing reference to is the whole question of our image and our standing in the regional and international community. If in fact we are stigmatized, if in fact we are known as somewhat of a pariah state, if in fact we are known as a country which had a rich history of production and creative energy, but we've now focused our energy to selling passports, unfortunately, to the detriment of our community, then quite frankly, that would be a very negation or an abortion of the kind of enabling environment we need to ensure that our young entrepreneurs will have a market to sell their goods. The fact of the matter is, and the right kind of reputation has to be nurtured and it has to be cultivated. That is the responsibility of our leaders. Trade exhibitions, persons visiting your island. We talk about various sectors that could be grown. What about the literature section? For example, we've had some prolific, well-known writers in our midst, quite frankly. And unfortunately, what we've seen, whereas some persons within the literary environment would come to Dominica to visit the home, for example, of a writer such as Jean Rees, such as the birthplace or the stamping ground of a Phyllis Yarolfrey, or other local writers, quite frankly, these are being torn down. So we are acting like barbarians. We are destroying our own culture. Our historical experience is being torn down. If you look at countries such as Barbados, Curacao, and others within the region, and see the meticulous way in which they preserve those artifacts of their history, which in fact is a drawing for many persons who are increasingly conscious of issues related to history, related to production, related to how far we've traveled, the road we've traveled. What about cottage industry tourism, for example? It seems that we've run into a block, we've run into a wall in terms of the development of the industry. We talked on the last page about the trail with wheelchair built. Have we added any value to it? We added stations to it to ensure that those who walk that trail, those who do that are safe, for example. We, for example, developed certain of our agricultural products along that wayside. So as persons walk the trail, the production and productivity that is going on in the hinterland. What have those that we have? Yes, we can have talent, but to the extent that we have take advantage of those talents, to add to those talents, to have our products to a greater extent they could be enjoyed in different forms by other countries. Why is it that Barbados may not? I say because I'm not sure.
Looks like we lost Dr. Andre. His internet is acting up. So Lambi, I wanted to go to you to just before we go to Suki, I wanted to ask you to give the numbers out, and then we maybe take a couple of calls, and then I will go over to Suki for him to get the ball rolling. So Lambi, give out the numbers, and let's see if we can take a couple of calls.
The Global View and Q taking your calls at the moment. The numbers are as follow: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are local numbers. The international or overseas number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those again. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. And we already have a caller on the line, so let's take this call. Caller, please go ahead.
Hey, good evening to you, Lambi, and good evening to the panel. I can't remember everybody who's on there, but I just want to say good night and always a great conversation. But I want to add a couple to things to what you guys are talking about in terms of business climate for Dominica. And Afi, good night to you. This is Lennon here. Afi is one of my heroes. But I'm gonna give you guys a simple philosophy. It's nothing complicated. And I like to ask people, if you are doing a business in your community, in your village, in your town, isn't it the best interest of your business if the people that you are trying to serve have disposable income to be able to buy your goods and services, gentlemen?
True.
And the reason why I ask is because every time we talk about business, we talk about I'm doing a business, and we fail to realize or acknowledge the fact that for a business to be successful, you need to have consumers of the goods and services or whatever your business is catering to. And if we live in a society where a gentleman or somebody has to make a decision between paying their bills, putting food on and feeding their family, paying insurance and utilities, then obviously our basic human instinct is to do what secures our survival. And in every society, in every generation, and since the beginning of time, man's main decision has always been on how we survive. And I think every time you are under a constant state of survival, it's kind of hard to make long-term plans when you are consumed with how am I going to survive for tomorrow. I say this because when we look at the industrial nations, like some of the countries in the U.S., what drives their economy is the consumption of goods and services. It's not perfect, it's probably a lot on credit, but it's the ability of these people to have disposable income, to be able to make the purchases that are not necessary. They are not needs, but they are wants. And if we are in a society that has been hell-bent on being mendicant, that has been hell-bent on not realizing the full productive capacity of our people, as he said it very, very clear at the beginning. You can have gold, diamond, silver, water, and all the resources in the world. If you do not tailor your human capacity in terms of education, science, in terms of values, and we don't want to forget values, to utilize those resources for the betterment of the entire society, we're going to have problems, gentlemen. And we can see that happening in places like Africa. We can see that happening in places like Dominica, where we've bragged about CBI. And I recently saw that the Prime Minister boasting about $2.3 billion in infrastructure. And I'm asking myself, why haven't we seen that money trickle down into the economy? And it tells you it's because our people, the human resources, the most important capital for any business to thrive, is not fully engaged. And therefore, our people do not reach the full potential of having that purchasing power to sustain business for the long run. And finally, I want to add, I know we've talked about all the issues and problems, but we must never underestimate the importance of having values in a society for our society to grow. If we have a society that, based on corruption, business cannot thrive, or even if it does, it's for only a few. If we do not have a society that's based on honesty, integrity, the respect of a handshake when making a decision, the lack of limited jealousy, envy, hatred, greed, selfishness, we cannot survive in any time or any period without a lead on those human qualities that are destructive to us. So as much as we talk about all the other factors, one of the most important factors in the cohesion of a society is the values we espouse. What kind of values we want for ourselves individually, our families, and our society, so that we can develop. Gentlemen, I'm listening as always, and always a wonderful program. You guys have a good day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lennon. Always on point. Lam, do you want to take another call?
Yes. Caller, please go ahead.
Hey, gentlemen, blessings to you all.
Blessings to you.
Blessings. Lambi, Dr. Andre, I am sorry your network giving you issues. Mr. Winston, blessings to you, the young gentleman that is there as well. Blessings to you all. Afi, my friend, blessings to you on faith. As I usually, in my own assessment, analyzing everything, I see a dictatorship in a nepotistic and fascistic way. And that level of nepotism that elevates a few selectively after thorough investigation and background check and know who you support, who you vote, and what you see on the radio, what you see on Mr. G program. When these people are being elevated, the few, the majority that are being deprived from the resources of the state, from receiving the resources of the state to elevate themselves, they cannot contribute to the few that were elevated. Then for the few to sustain, they have to get involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, because they get a taste of the life of the Rileys. So the madness that's existing in Dominica, where the preferential treatment for some people, and you know the Prime Minister is his godfather, or it's Gon Emanuel and Greta Emanuel, or it's two lawless guys that die in police custody. And then look at all that. A little child, 16-year-old, end up in a quagmire, if I may say, and look at in the manner in which, you know, the decomposing and all this kind of madness and police playing games, and all these things are the offspring of corruption, the offspring of the disadvantage when you put people at a disadvantage where they cannot survive in their own country because of greed. They say the love of money is the root of all evil. That is so evil. Money can spend itself. If you lock a vault and it cannot open the vault and say, look, let me do some evil. Greed is the root of all evil, not the love of money. That is old slavish mentality. And I'm saying what is happening in this country. The judgment is inescapable and inevitable, because no matter the magnitude of a population or the land mass, that type of governance can only take a country down, and a little piece of speck of dust in the archipelago think it can survive by he will not get. Oh, Dr. Andre, well, charge him a big money, come out overseas and think he'll pass through custom. Oh, blessings, World Bank give money after disaster pass to give to small business. No, I spent $2,000, almost $3,000 to meet 8 requirements to get $6,666. No money for him. And this is how brutally blatant the Dominican lethal party is. And you see this country in a regression gear, like a reverse gear. And forward movement is for the few, and it's just back for the majority. This country is destined to hell if somebody can put a spoke in that rim. Thank you.
And thanks a lot for your comment here tonight. Lambi, you want to take another call? No? Okay, so let me, well, if you, your image is a little small in the box in the corner there, but I mean, make me a high sign if there's a call, and I will come back to you to take it. But let me go over to Herbert Suki Winston. Suki, I know that you have some additional comments that you want to make on this subject here tonight. Go right ahead.
That this platform that is made available, I am definitely going to take advantage of that, because success and the success that supposed to originate from the involvement in the very enterprises is the survival is totally questionable. Let me just say to the nation at large, a lot has been said about agriculture, quite a bit. Inclusive prices that the farmers are seeking and unable to achieve it and to experience it. This is only one factor. But agriculture in its own right cannot survive away from the family base. The elders of our generation do the cultivation. But if we had the right people in the right places, it would be clearly seen that under the areas that one involved in agriculture, it is some sort of micro production, small production, lack of competition, and you cannot attack the external market by one person putting 1 or 2 boxes on a boat and taking it across to Martinique, to Guadeloupe, and what have you. Here comes the point now. What is the answer to that? And the answer to that is agriculture on a cooperative system. As long as we do not do what was done in the 50s, where we had a portfolio that deals with cooperative, I can remember Mr. Barry headed that particular sector, we are nowhere. And it is difficult for us to achieve anything significant. Let me just say, it's only short-sightedness that have us to be where we are. If we had proper stewardship, it could be clearly seen in definition that the elders and the more the 50s and 60s who are still able biologically to till the soil, their children would have been able to assemble in an institution where they do marketing. Without that knowledge, marketing, agriculture cannot survive. Because, simple, the producer always feel that his services are being exploited by the vendors. The vendors themselves still feel that whatever price is offered to them, they do not just take a yam or a dasheen and put it in a box and take it to St. Martin. To them and to the farmer, hey, we're selling a pound of dasheen here for $4. We are certain sure that you are getting somewhere in the region of $6. Because why the farmer is so critical about it is because he's not aware of what marketing is all about. Presentation of the commodity. The channels of getting the produce presented and packaged properly is one of the major factors that is not being considered. So this is the reason why, as long as we don't decide to get cooperatives to be taught in the schools for the young generation to know what is commodity presentation on the market, we don't stand a chance. Everybody will find themselves in the Roseau market, in a van, in the hot sun, no proper ventilation, no plastic packaging of the commodity. We do not stand a chance. This is one. My dear people, survival of business in this country is a science in its own rights. That in itself is not being taught at schools. Because diversification is where it is all at. If I'm being taken as a pattern and example, let me just say, for the survival of a gasoline station, The whole focus was to move the people so as they would be able to do a one-spot shopping. You stop in the supermarket, you go to the bakery, you go to the medical store, and basically one business is integrated into another. Let me just say to you, sir, I am losing my pants, to say the least, in the fuel retailing of the gasoline and the diesel. There is basically no survival in that. This is the reason why no banks will finance anyone to open a new gasoline station. The sequence of restructuring the retail prices is murderous. Today, you're being given, say, 15 cents on a gallon. You go and you stock up in a matter to meet the requirements, the needs of the motorists. Before your stock is exhausted, there comes a total reduction of 30 cents. So the money that you may have accumulated from the invoice price of the commodity, you lose it. And you have to get some money somewhere in a matter for you to continue business. It is totally unprofitable for the private sector to get involved in the fuel retailing business. This is the reason why, if you have to run an overdraft, after 3 months, the bank will call on you and you will just see a bailiff handing you a handkerchief and tell you, hey, you have to get out of that. And basically, this is how it goes. And see what is actually happening on the whole. This in itself is on that part of it. And I do not know. I am blind. I do not have the understanding. Who is acting on the economics of this country? Who does? Who advises the Minister of Finance? I would like to know, I would like them to make a declaration. Inform me who does. And I would like to have an audience with this person who advises government on the economics of this country. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm giving you a warning. A warning. This thing about you talking about budget. So, you are misleading the people, to say the least. And we want some realistic figures, as I myself do want. I want to know what is the debt, the external debt of this country. I want a methodology to push me forward, to propel me forward, to tell me of the status of the foreign debt of this country. Is it a debt that I will never be able to participate and to pay off? And then my children and grandchildren would be involved in this system? This is frustrating, sir. Please, Mr. Minister of Finance, I am requesting this on behalf of the voiceless. And you see, those are the things that accumulate. This is the reason why at this present moment, there are more people gathering in church at the burial than those that goes to church on a Sunday or a day of adoration. It is a complicated factor, And many of these problems cannot go out overnight. The billions of dollars that you, Mr. Prime Minister, or the Minister of Finance is expressing to the people creates a high level of frustration. Please, sir, go down to convey a message that the ordinary man can understand. We have a problem. And whatever I do today is because of the sacrifices made by me and my family to put 50 cents aside. And basically, sir, the 50 cents have now reached 7.5 cents. My company, my family, purchased the HCS factory at Newtown. Our plan, dual. One, we had the full plan of a model of a plaza. To date, we own the company, the area. But because of the dwindling down of the economy, it would be suicidal to go anywhere further. It's not fair, sir. I have a policy, sir, that whenever I need funds, I work a plan. And if at all, by any given chance, which is very rare, if at all I approach a bank, I then tell you I am looking for a partner. Why? Because what the estimated cost of the undertaking, put it this way, for argument's sake, is $2 million. I would provide $800,000. So therefore, your involvement is $1,200 or $1,200,000. And this is actually how it is. Because I term it to be very risky, exceptionally risky, because population reduces by the day and by the hour. Money is spent to educate the people, but outside of that, sir, there is no guarantee that the mode of education is relevant to what is being taught to the student and whether there is a chance of survival. What the parents normally say to their kids. Uncle wrote me last week. Uncle decided that he has an apartment in Curaçao or Aruba, and he can able to lodge, you can lodge there, somewhat like that. And before the child reaches a semi-matured stage, he feels or she feels the future is in the outside. That is being unfair. Because my tax money keeps the child at school, build a school building, teachers are being utilized their services, and basically that's it. And when that child reaches the golden age of production, the child skips out. Even the government in its own self cannot and have never said to us that 2 years ago or 2 years, 15 or 30 students seek education, schooling outside of the country. Tell us as to how many return. So therefore, what we are doing is to furnish the labor for the foreign entrepreneurship. Where are we? And this is the reason why I am asking the valid question. What is the criteria for one to be a politician? I would want to know. Because what I am seeing, it is very nationwide. The people tend not to stay back and develop the country. For what I experience, let me just bring it closer to home now. For what I experienced with my son, who spent years at university, I had to go down on my knees and made it abundantly clear to him, and he accepted my philosophy because he did not receive a scholarship. He was not a recipient of a grant. He was not the recipient of a loan from the bank, an educational loan. He was on his own outside there. But the good thing about it, he came from the University of Newtown, which is Suki's Enterprises. And he was not being committed to the outside world. So he knows, and he was good enough to serve the enterprise back home and forsake the attraction outside, because this guy could have been in Saudi Arabia with some of his schoolmates in Miami State University. He came back, and he is presently involved and diversified his talent in other tourism areas and making a significant contribution to the country. I have a problem. I have problems. And this is the reason why I am an advocate of an educational revolution. We need to concentrate on the kindergarten, prepare the children for tomorrow, prepare the children not to increase population, but to assist the channel of entrepreneurship in this country. It is unfortunate, sir, to sit here today, to operate in a country where people cannot say what is affecting them because of fear. And this is the reason why it is being said, I'll tell you, fear is the parent of cruelty. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us fear not to negotiate. Let us not be fair to negotiate. It is unfortunate that we sit and we taking life as is, but it hasn't been improved. We still take things for granted. It's important to note that you now go on to the foreign news, CNN, Al Jazeera, and what have you, and we all know what is happening in Iran. Iran has oil, but in Dominica, we have what they want, which is water. What has this country and its clerical officers have done in a matter for foreign exchange? We're still on a dying lap. No one has ever informed us that we tried to sell water to the Far East, and they would have been able to do something. We would be able to strengthen our position. Economically, we would have been as rich as Iran, Saudi, and Oman, and all these Jewish countries, because we have the precious commodity, which is water. Eugenia Charles tried something, and if you come on the Suki's beach, you will be able to see the infrastructure that Eugenia Charles put in place, which is rotting out now. But what has actually happened over the 20 years of consistent labor operation running this country? Please, sir, I am asking, and I'll ask now again, give us the total amount that the country owes to the outside world, because we want to know that when our children and grandchildren ask us about their standard of living, that we have something documented to have said we did not endorse that system.
All right. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot for this intervention there, Suki. Lambi, do you want to take a call or no?
Yeah. Yes, we got a caller on there. Please go ahead, caller.
Hi, Lambert. Good night.
Please go ahead. And
Good night.
Yes, and good night to the panelists, Mr. G, Mr. Suki, Dr. Andre, and the younger man who speaks early on, Afimate. Good night to the elders.
Yes, good night.
Yes, Mr. King. There were very interesting education program, and I think sometimes we have to blend the society with the experienced men that trod the road before, like Mr. Suki, the man I know long, and Mr. Andrew. These guys know the struggle. When they grow up on the struggle before us. Everything Mr. Suki said, I totally agree with him. Afi, I totally agree with him, and the young gentleman. I love to listen, and I love to listen. I listen sometimes Mr. Sam Raphael, which is one of Dominica tourism brand. He's a high mark in Dominica tourism. He said a thing sometime back, and he said, why we spend all this money going and marketing Dominica all over the world, spending thousands and millions. He said, why we don't promote and market our island better? For instance, look at the neighboring island between Martinique and Guadeloupe. There's around 1 million people. Right now it's the summer. There are around 3 months holiday. If you look at it, you'll see a lot of French people locally walking around, and they come for healing, medical healing, food, as Mr. Winston just said. They go to the sulfur spring. They want to eat the local food because some of their land are very polluted with chemical, and the government warn them, do not eat from some areas. There is too much chemical. Even the sea, they said, have chemical. The water, because of the level of chemical they were using in the agriculture. And one of the things Mr. Sam said, market our product better. Look at the ferry terminal in Roseau. They're supposed to be one of the biggest food restaurants. Well packaged food stuff to go to Guadeloupe and Martinique in a way that they could carry it across. For instance, peeling the local food, packaging it, freeze it, put it in a how you call it, a small container that can sustain the coldness. That's where you're going to market. That's where you're going to sell, because the people want it. If they carry it with the banana skin, they're not going to accept it. But if you peel it and you frozen it and you put it in a little cooler, they're going to buy it. They're going to eat it. They're going to buy a lot of our local products. For instance, you have Mr. Paris Cocoa in Marigot. You have many others. You have Mr. Andrew Coffee, Mr. Louis Coffee, I mean. You have many things. You have Blessing Parrot Carving. All these are things that are going to sell. And unless we don't understand that, and I've been telling the Prime Minister that, look at the money in the aid bank. Sometime back they put 100 40 million. Now I heard the Prime Minister said he's going to put another 60 million. But then he don't have a cooperative officer to guide him, as he's saying, how to spend the money. If it's to buy a property in Roseau so that the vendors in Roseau could have a place to sell when the rain season. The vendors need a street to sell. As Afi just say, our craft, our culture, it's out of it, and the people come for that. Nobody helping him to guide him how to spend the money. Look at the new market that there. Doing that $16 million there. Do have a plan to cast over the market and make another platform that you can get space over the market, and then you have another big museum there with all Dominica products and our local enterprise. Mr. G, these people, I don't know, I just don't know what to say again. I'm a small businessman and I do really want to cry deaf, but then it's not getting nowhere. It's frustrating. How many young people are going to go through that, as Mr. Winston just said a while ago? Young people, every day they work, they want pay. And I believe, Mr. G, people like you and Mr. Andrew and Mr. Suki, I'm asking all you, find a time on the radio station, if it's a Sunday afternoon. Somebody sponsor the program. Get some of the other people like Miss Anita Bully, Miss Gloria, which is the magistrate, Tobas SP, to help all you, to educate us, to make life better. Because the youth now not going to play. The young people not playing. We see what's happening every day. It's dangerous times we're living in. And it's people like all you we have to listen to. Have a good night.
All right, Ronnie, thanks a lot for those remarks. Lambi, you want to take another call? No, okay. Well, let me come back to you, Dr. Andre. I mean, for your further comments on, because you've heard some of the comments from the callers and some of the comments around the table here. Your further comments on the topic here tonight. And you need to unmute your mic. Your mic is muted. Dr. Andre, your mic is muted. You need to unmute your mic. All right, so if you're maybe I can go over to Tony for a moment until you can unmute your mic so you can join us again. Tony, you've listened to Arthur, you've listened to Dr. Andre, you've listened to Suk, you listened to the callers. Your further thoughts on the work that you're doing and to encourage some of the entrepreneurs in the field today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the first thing is I have a lot of respect for the people on the panel here. Like, I don't want to. I guess what I should say is, I am aware of the limits of what I can contribute. I've observed a good deal and I'm educated in whatever, but you know, there's a real wealth of. There's a lot that you gain from having operated in Dominica for the amount of time that Suki has, you know? And I've operated here for about 6 years, so I can definitely give my ideas, but I almost want to pose a few questions to the other people on the panel, truly. Like, I mean, one thing is I don't understand what limits us from operating exclusively in the private sector. I'm aware of the role of the enabling environment, of course, definitely aware of it. You know, like Suki said. It's a science. It's a science figuring out how to keep your business sustainable and profitable here, and diversification is definitely key to that. But one thing that has occurred to me is, well, okay, Dominica has a lot of the ingredients for the success it wants. We have, at least as many people outside as we have inside. I saw a stat once that suggested there were about 200,000 Dominicans in the diaspora. And one thing I've asked myself over the last few years is, well, why can't I see that being leveraged from the ground here? And what I mean by that specifically is, if you look at other groups, they organize themselves in ways that lead to economic success across the group. And yes, their governments come into play in that in a variety of ways, but the group itself is not necessarily limited by what the government does or doesn't do. So I'm thinking, you look at Chinese people who, we have a lot of Chinese influence here, right? If you look around the world, you see Chinatowns, and Chinatowns are really just distribution centers for the goods being manufactured in China, right? You see a lot of financial and service interaction amongst Jewish groups. You see similar things around Turkish groups, the Syrian groups. Across the Caribbean, a lot of the people who are the most successful business people are Syrian ethnic, and I know obviously that there's a very interesting history to that, right? But one of the things I ask myself is, how can we, as Dominicans interested in the prosperity of Dominica, organize ourselves to take advantage of the fact that, just think of the spending power of those 200,000 Dominicans in the diaspora, and connect that to people on the ground, whether it's to simply hire and train Dominicans locally, whether it's to identify businesses in Canada or the States or the UK that is run by Dominicans, and then stock it purposefully with Dominican produce, or like whether it's to organize those diasporans into financing instruments that can provide finance for people on the ground, whether or not the government does it. And honestly, I'm curious. I haven't yet figured out what the answer is. Like I said, I people like Afi, I've read about your work in the books that Dr. Irvin Andre has written. Dr. Andre, I've really enjoyed reading your work, and Suki, of course, you're extremely, you are an example of the business success we can have in Dominica. So I'm taking guidance from all the other people on the council, but I'm aware that I'm the youngest person here, and I don't yet understand why we haven't been able to do this in the prior generations, or whether it has been done and then just decimated before I've become aware of it. And I'm less than giving my ideas. I can definitely give you more ideas. I would actually love to talk about that.
But Tony, don't feel bad. I mean, I used to be in your shoes. We all used to be in your shoes. But let me just go over to Dr. Andre, because some of what you're talking about, I think Dr. Andre can respond to that.
Yeah. Yes, first of all, sorry for the technical difficulties. These things happen. My expertise is in a different type of technology, let's put it that way. But Tony poses a very wonderful question. Implicitly, he's talking about the impediments to success of young startup businesses. But let me pose that question to him. What if you are competing on an uneven playing field for raw materials? What if there are taxes imposed on, for example, your materials, which make it difficult for you to compete with other regional businesses? What if certain businesses who import products into Dominica do so without having to pay the taxes that you have to pay? What if the taxes on fuel, for example, or the difficulties that Suki talked about, is almost like a guillotine on the neck of gas, of businesses selling gas to the public. What if the markets are not being opened up to give you a competitive advantage, even if you have the terrain to produce products such as bananas, mangoes, oranges, and so on? What if your local population is being weaned on a diet of favoring foreign-made goods over their own? What if, for example, banana chips are not valued as much as other products imported from abroad? What if that, in fact, is the landscape of Dominica insofar as local initiative and enterprise is concerned? Then clearly it is not difficult to see that although you are struggling and you tried your damnedest to succeed, that there are factors which unfortunately are inhibiting your progress locally and regionally and internationally. We may have fertile land, but we cannot compete with countries that have hundreds of thousands of acres. We could not compete without some preferential treatment with Chiquita bananas from Latin America. We could not compete without preferential duties from England. Indeed, when Europe decided to treat everyone equally, that meant to a significant degree the death knell of our agricultural industry. So if your folks, those you elect to rule you, if those folks are not making a genuine and meaningful effort, going the extra mile, going the extra yard to help and assist Dominican businesses to allow them to achieve their fullest potential, the top potential. If, for example, you open a toilet paper industry and there's a huge market in Venezuela waiting and begging to import your toilet paper, but you are receiving no help because of political reasons, it doesn't take much imagination to know why you may not succeed as spectacularly as otherwise you would succeed. So yes, local initiative is wonderful. Local initiative is prized. The dedication and devotion to business and to success exhibited historically by persons like Suki and Athi, those should be prized. But without that nurturing environment, without the charity, you know what the saying is? Charity begins where? Not in New York, not in La Cusette-Lang. It is at home. Charity begins at home. What is if those you elect to enable you to succeed is not doing so, or is only doing so for themselves? What do you think is the result, my friend? What do you think is the result? That is why, compared to the past, the industries that we have, at least the extent to which they existed before, doesn't exist. And some might lament, oh, stop talking about the past. You can't talk about the past when it's convenient for you. You have to talk about the past to inspire young people like Tony and others, because what they need is hope. Not just hope. They need those steps, those initiatives taken on their behalf, because when they employ persons from their own island, and those persons support other businesses, and those persons send their children to school, and those persons try to educate themselves and their children to be able to come back and add to that business that they've created. That is the cycle of life that we seek in a nation, an independent nation, a continuous march towards progress, not towards retrogression, not towards the wholesale closure of businesses, not towards people. There's no food bank here, or we have our own local version, the Red Clinic. That is not what we want. That is not what we aspire to. As I told you, if Suki was aspiring to that, he wouldn't be selling gas at 6 o'clock in the morning. He alone. His employers are sleeping. in their coconut fiber mattresses. So that is what we want, a steady march towards progress. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. Athia, I'm sure that you have quite a bit that you can add to all of this here.
I didn't want to speak too much more than I have already, Sheridan, honestly. But what I would like to do is just give a list of some of the business and investment ideas and propositions that I am personally aware of, and in many cases over the last 20 years, have been involved in preparing, in submitting to this administration. And let's not forget, history again, I was part of this government.
Athi, could you just speak a little louder into your mic? Because I want to make sure we hear your ideas very clearly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's really important to give a sense of can-do, sense of hope. Because there are many business ideas that were just looking around for people like Tony, that were prepared with the greatest of detail, with international support and financial support, brought these to the point of readiness for financing to the European Union, to the World Bank, to other international lending agencies through the government. I was saying, remember, I was a part of this government. I knew it intimately. I walked away from it intimately and publicly because I saw the beginnings of what eventually became its housekeeping seal, a creed of deception, even among themselves, among the leadership. So I walked away from that. But just so people like Tony and his generation understand that there's some projects there literally waiting for Tony and Tony's. One of them is, for example, a few years ago, that goes back to when Julius Timothy was the Minister of Finance in the United Workers' Party government. I presented that proposal to him for a full and complete recycling of all the solid waste in Dominica on a plant that was being financed by the Canadian government, which would have at the time cost $1.4 million, which sounds like pocket change today. It would have taken care of all the tires, the glass, the plastics, all the waste, all the troublesome waste in our stream, and created enough money so that the Solid Waste Management Corporation would today have been a private and thriving corporation, not begging government to fix a tire, for money to fix a tire. That's one. That proposal still exists. Up until 5-6 months ago, I was called to a meeting. Yes, informally. Remember the time a few months ago when the landfill was on fire and there were tires burning there and people in the area were suffering badly? I got called by residents of the area to advise us to what could be. I gave them and walked them through the proposal document. I gave it to Regina Walsh in her hand because she was the leader of the group that came to the meeting that night. And I told her, take this into the whoever you need to take it to. If you need to update it or tweak it, come back to me and we will do it for you. No charge. So that's the proposition that it is. There was another proposition that existed under this government, this administration, for something called a biopark. You remember what happened in the Layu Valley when there was a big landslide that broke down all that sand from inside and created an opportunity for a whole bunch of people to make a fair amount of money, including our dear friends, boots on the ground?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It created an opportunity to do something that was financed by the international environmental community. The money was sitting in the country here for about a year. Nothing was being done. I got called. I was asked to come and help it. We rescued it in 3 months. We prepared the proposal. The proposal attracted $24 million of financing instantly from an environmental source. But you know what? I was the team leader on that prepared the proposal. And this cabinet refused to receive a presentation on the proposal because I was the one who had to present it. And that caused the proposal to be taken off the list for financing. It was created and then a whole park in the Layou Valley that today would have been created for thousands of jobs. There are other things like that. I'm not going to go, it's a long list. But it is only to say that there is a group of people here in the country who over the years, we never stopped behaving as if there was hope. We always feel that there's hope. Why do you think Suki is still here? It's because deep down inside of him, he knows there's hope. He feels so. And we've generated materials. We prepared the first full financing for exporting water from Dominica. The only thing that had to be done, we had 2 island buyers for the water north of us. The only thing that had to be done was an agreement on the price of the water, which we were going to buy from Dowasco, which would have taken Dowasco out of debt completely in 3 years' time. The minister at the time, Mr. Reggie Ossory, refused the adjusted price that was presented by the board of Dowasco to facilitate that trade. The trade never got off the ground. Another issue, PetroCaribe, under the tutelage and care again of that same minister, my dearest friend Reginald Ossory, from the beautiful village of Tukari. What happened to all that money? What happened to it? Over $100 million US. Who has accounted for that money? Could that not have been used to stimulate and promote? By now, we could have had field mountings for photovoltaics, for solar power units in the north of the island on the west coast. More wind turbines like the one that is now powering Rosalie Bay Resort. These ideas and these papers and these documents and proposals exist. They're looking for warm bodies and brave souls, brave hearts, who are willing to attach themselves to those documents and say, we will do this because this is Dominica of my dreams. We will do this. One more, Neville Wade, the longest operating sea captain in Dominica's history, still alive. Instead of helping Neville, instead of supporting Neville when he bought his first ferry, a 350-person ferry, the financial institution from which he had to borrow some money kept coming after him, coming after him, to the point where literally the boat had to be abandoned in a dry dock. This is a man who had bought vessels and carried cargo in and out of Dominica for decades, since he was 16 years old. He's going to be 80 this year. So there's no lack of propositions to lift Dominica up. And here's the last thing I'll say. Given the chance to do these and other kinds of things that Suki and others would also like to do, in 3 years' time, this is 2026, 27, 28, 29, before Dominica turns at 50, we could have turned this entire island around in the most beautiful way. But one thing has to be done to enable that to happen. All those who have used their positions of public office, which were designed to facilitate this wonderful transformation of Dominica into truly the nature island of the world, all those persons, many of whom are still operational even today, they need to find themselves in a comfortable seat within the audience of a judge. They have to be brought to account. You cannot have, if you have a bobo and you just put plaster on it, it will not go away. You know, the leg might start feeling better, but the bobo is there getting worse. You have to get rid of that bobo. And you have some of those people today in a little by-election in Rosanov facilitating the importation of voters for a by-election. And they're holding public office in this country, not political office. These are public administrative and technical officers in the public service. So let's be clear. We know what's wrong. We know about the big rock in the road. We know what it's made of. We know how to move it. We need, frankly, our generation needs a younger hands like Tony and others to come forward, and together let's do this. The city of Newtown can be transformed into one of the most beautiful coastal areas of any island in the Caribbean. It can. So let's get together and do it. Frankly, and we need to get together and do it, even if those people continue to run interference, because their interference will one day eat them up and get rid of them.
Thank you, Artie. Artie, we're kind of running out of time. I'm going to come back to you in a minute for you to give your closing remarks.
Consider this my closing remarks, Sheridan.
Oh, really?
Please. Yes.
Okay, but maybe after you've heard the other closing remarks, maybe you might want to make a closing remarks. Who knows? But you know, Tony, it's time for us to go. I mean, we have run out of time. Would you make your closing remarks?
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thank you for having me here. What I can say is, I've adopted the view that no one is coming to save us, and if we want to see Dominica better, we have to build it ourselves. And that is speaking from to some extent a point of privilege. Like, I didn't have loans when I finished my master's. You know, I could save up finances to come back here. People will find themselves with different in different circumstances, and they'll do what makes sense. I think that the problems in Dominica are tractable. I know that they are very complicated, but at the same time, Dominica is blessed with a lot of resources, you know, physical resources, but definitely the human resources. We're very intelligent people. We're all very patriotic. People leave, but they remain connected. I think the way forward is a stronger private sector, a stronger civic sector, and those two sectors can pull forward whatever government the people put there. The way I make progress is I focus on the work I'm doing, and I focus on doing it with like-minded people. And I would encourage the people listening to do that. Like, again, I'm very, very optimistic about what the 250 collective Dominicans can do, regardless of whatever government they have on island. And I think I will close here.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Mr. Herbert Suki Winston, your closing remarks.
Thanks, sir, for the opportunity. Thanks for able to voice my plans as a patriotic Dominican who never traveled on the foreign land to earn a living directly. I assisted in the foreign land to purchase, but not to stay not an hour longer than the time that was consumed in a matter of exercising purchasement of commodities. I would like to take this opportunity today to just spot identify a few of those factors. Very inexpensive. One, Domlec needs a relocation of their site. I am of the opinion that the people of Fonkole have been taken into their system for a prolonged period carbon dioxide. It's not good for health. And unfortunately, no consensus has been taken to educate the people as to their sicknesses, their ailment. The container incident of the most recent past could have been more dangerous to the state. For what I have been seeing happening, that the tourists, when the cruise ship is around, the tourists try to find ways and means for them to exit from the ship, and whilst the merchants are trying to get their containers to unstuff their imported material. So that incident of the national could have escalated, if at all, by any means that the container would get into contact with the tourists. And that plan can be a very inexpensive plan, because the anchoring facility, what they call a buoy, anchoring buoy, all you got to do is to just shift the ship a little more to the south and build yourself a landing site, just as what we have with the tourist, the cruise ship berth of that dimension, just around 4 feet, 5 feet, for a couple to be able to disembark, but the ship would have to move a little more south, and then that landing key would be erected, and the people would have been able to access by way of the landing site adjacent to the Kubuli Ba. Again, it would be a dual completed program, because by then, for some reason or the other, that could be done expeditiously. And then the Public Works Department is right there, and then vacant as it is, to have had the shopping area to entertain and accommodate the cruise ship. The other problem, which is another simple one, but that in itself has to do with the traffic department. Ever too often, I am able to see the unpaved section of the road where the tourists have to be jumping here and jumping there and move across with fertilizer being offloaded and containers occupying the space for the motoring vehicles. That in itself could have been solved by diverting traffic onto Steber Street, one-way traffic down, going north, and allow the people the free area for them to walk their way through and end up by the Raffole hardware department onto the bridge, and then the hazardness would have been minimized in that regard, and the vehicles from Simon's home going through Stibber Street, so it would have at least a one way this way going north, and then the people from the ship would have been accommodated going south. My people, I am keeping my fingers crossed that something, we just had a resemblance of an incident, I call it. But it can escalate if at all a tourist was involved. So please, the authorities, I am begging you to consider and to see the practicality of what is being said to you with no hard feelings. All of us are patriotic Dominicans, and we are looking forward for the betterment. The only thing that hinders that is the national debt that we need to have some information on. I thank you.
Thanks a lot, Herbert Suki Winston, my schoolmate. Arthur, have you had any further thoughts on the final thoughts? No? Okay, so let me go to Dr. Irving Andre to give us his final word. You need to unmute your mic. Yeah.
Okay, that's better. Yeah, so let me commend all our panelists for the brilliant presentations they made this evening. Quite enlightening, quite informative, quite educational, particularly from someone like myself who has very limited business experience. But out of the great information provided by all the panelists, I'll probably end on something alluded to by Suki. He wants to know the debt. But Mr. Suki, isn't it interesting and ironic that increasing debt at this juncture of our time, when we have hundreds of millions of dollars hidden in mysterious accounts, and that money is not being put to the service of Dominicans on the ground? Isn't that an indictment of what passes or poses for governance today? And we heard reference to the fact, the talk about the electioneering, or should I say the gerrymandering, or the enactment of a piece of legislation with respect to elections a week or two ago, which can best be described as a Theft of Elections Amendment Act. All that designed to ensure one thing: Dominicans on the ground remain in a position of thraldom, in a position of dependency, in a positions where they are unable, without external help or help from the political directorate, to have their business grow. Let me end by echoing what is best be described as a biblical admonition. Those persons, people like Pastor Rodney and some other priests, such as, for example, Father Chapless and others: let my people go, or let our people go. Let them go forth and spread their wings. Go forth and be creative and productive. Let them go to make something of themselves. Let them go to add a gloss to the island called Dominica. Let them change that negativism, that type of ostracism, which our nation and our people are experiencing through no fault of their own. Give them an opportunity to breathe. Give them an opportunity to prosper, just as those in the political directorate are showing prosperity beyond the wildest dreams of the majority of citizens. Let those who haven't been able to fix their roofs, give them the means for them to do so. Give them the means to start and grow their own businesses. Give them the means to renovate their hotels. Give them the means to start their own small businesses, which was essential to ensuring that their families survive. Give the persons a fighting chance, just as you have given so many foreigners to come and become millionaires and disappear and leave the landscape bleak in many respects. So what we are seeking tonight, certainly, at least I speak for myself, but based on what the others have commented on, an opportunity to make something of this wonderful realm called Dominica. We have the resources, human and natural resources. We have the fertile soil. We have the people. All we have to do is to remove that yoke, and God willing, essentially and eventually, we will do so. But we have to reduce the cost of achieving that laudable goal. But again, we are guided by forces beyond our control. And I hope that we will continue to be guided and blessed by those forces beyond our control. So thank you all. And thank you, Mr. G, for having me this evening.
Well, thank you, Dr. Andre. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Herbert, Suki, Winston. Thank you, Lambi. Thank you, Sherwin. Thank you, all of the folks who are with us on Facebook and on YouTube tonight. We didn't get to even read any of your posts on there on Facebook, but thank you so much for sticking with us. So let's hope that we will meet again next Tuesday night on another topic of interest to Dominica. So let me just say a very pleasant good night to everybody. Everybody, take care.
Good night, all. Good night,
All right. Good night.
The Big Station. Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from. Understanding our past. Embracing our present. Charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty. Embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global View on Q. Networking Dominica with the rest of the world. The experts are in the house. From Dominica, Canada, the Caribbean.